Uh,
Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man? They say murder three. Strange things that happen here. How stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree?
Welcome to Strange Things, broadcasting from the Arkanasa Radio Studios in Laredo, Texas. And welcome to the show. I'm your host, Chris James. We have almost survived 2019. The year is almost over. It seems like just a few months ago we were all looking forward to the end of the world on December 21st, 2012. You notice you don't hear from those folks anymore? I kind of get a kick out of it when watching Ancient Aliens, when it's one of the shows from the past, and they talk about, the Mayan calendar and the end of the world, December 20th. It's like it's going to happen. If you're going to predict something and really put a whole lot of emphasis into it, like, say, staking your career on it, you might want to avoid anything like the end of the world. Because when you're wrong, you're really wrong. Anyway, I've survived the end of the world so many times I no longer pay attention to these so called experts that keep telling us the end is near. I'm sitting here in the studio with the air conditioner going. It's warm outside. It's December, and it's warm outside. The advantages of living in Texas. We're having our lawn mowed instead of our walk shoveled. Anyway, January got off to a strange start in 2019. A man in Salinas, California, was caught on a surveillance camera doing some downright strange stuff. The people living in the house had a high tech doorbell, kind of like a Ring or a Nest, only it didn't record from the doorbell, it recorded from the side. Well, the homeowners received a notification saying that there was somebody at the door. A man, identified by police as a 32-year-old Robert Arroyo, could be seen lurking outside the house. He then walks up to the front door and begins licking the doorbell. He stood there by the front door with his tongue out, licking away as if the doorbell tasted good or something. He did take a break from abusing the doorbell to relieve himself on the front lawn. Then, after spending way too much time with paying attention to the doorbell, he stole an extension cord that the people had for their Christmas lights. The homeowners said they were out of town when the incident happened, but their children were inside the house. The video has gotten this case a lot of attention and it sets it apart from your average night stalkers. He's obviously being pretty perverted and weird about it, Salinas police commander said. Doorbell licking. I wonder what got this guy to think, that doorbell looks kinda tasty. And of course, this reminds me of one of my own weird sightings that I had. I was on Mines Road, and I was trying to get through the intersection of Milo and Mines. The traffic was backed up in every direction due to construction on Mines and the enormous number of trucks moving cargo in and out of Laredo. Somebody thought it would be a good idea to put thousands of warehouses and businesses all along Mines with only two ways of getting in or out. You either have to take Loop 20 or Highway 255. There's no other route. Genius. Well, I'm sitting in my unit, waiting for the traffic to get moving, and I notice the passenger in the truck right next to me was holding his cell phone up to his face. Well, this wasn't strange. What was strange was he was licking the phone. I had to look close to see if what I thought I was seeing was what was actually happening. He was licking his phone. Long, slow strokes. Maybe he had some kind of a new app that let him taste things on his phone. I was sitting there staring at some guy licking his phone for about 2 or 3 minutes. What has been seen cannot be unseen. Doctors, staff, and patients at a hospital in Alaska, one of the largest cities in Alaska, got a surprise of a lifetime when a moose wandered in for a quick snack of the bushes by the front door. Video footage captured in January by a worker at Alaska Regional Hospital in Anchorage show a moose come walking in through the automatic doors and into the front room of the hospital. The moose pokes around some of the greenery near the entrance before it starts grazing. Didn't think we had pets, Stephanie Hupton, who works in billing, said. She was in the hospital and she was the one that captured the footage. She told the local news station that she started recording after a patient mentioned to security officers there was a moose in the lobby. She was just going about her business, having a morning snack, Hupton said. Hospital spokeswoman Kirsten Lastfka, must be Norwegian, said the moose got inside the building around 11:30 through the doors that had gotten stuck open because of the extreme cold. The plant greenery in the lobby was likely inviting to the animal, who ended up eating some of the plants before leaving the building about 10 minutes later. The moose hung around the covered garage for a few hours before wandering off in search of something else to eat. A thing about moose a lot of people don't know is they are somewhat dangerous, especially the males. February in Jakarta, Indonesia, police have had to apologize and they have pledged disciplinary action after officers draped a live snake around the neck of a suspect. They were trying to get him to confess to some crimes that he had committed. I have seen some unusual interrogation methods, but never live snakes. A video circulated online showing a man being questioned about stolen mobile phones. He was seated with his hands cuffed behind his back. He begins yelling in distress as a snake is pushed towards his face by one of the police officers. The man, who can be seen wreathing on the ground for much of the time, is asked by the officer, "How many times have you stolen mobile phones?" The suspect later responds by saying only 2. During the video, a voice can be heard ordering the man to open his eyes, and at one stage they threaten to put the snake in his mouth or into his trousers. In a statement, the police chief issued an apology, saying the investigator was not professional in doing his job. But did he get a confession? Oh, okay, I know it's not right, but he did get a confession. And the guy was guilty, but, well, you're not supposed to do things like that. The police chief added that the officers had been acting on their own initiative and trying to get a confession, saying that the snake was non-venomous and it was tame. "We have taken stern action against the personnel," the chief said. He added that the officers themselves had not physically harmed the man. Papua police spokesman Ahmad Mustafa Kamal said the case was being investigated by the Internal Affairs Unit, and if a violation of the law or code of conduct were proven, action would be taken. I'm wondering, is there such a law that says you can't use a snake to interrogate someone? They'll probably add that to the books. If you ever look at the rules and regulations that you have to follow while at work, Just about every one of those rules is there because somebody in the past did something. Reports of human rights violations by security forces often emerge from Papua New Guinea, where the separatist movement has been simmering for decades. Papua New Guinea is a former Dutch colony, and the western part of the island was incorporated into Indonesia after a widely criticized UN-backed referendum in 1969. There's the problem right there. The UN got involved. Those folks think they have solutions when most of the time they don't even know what the problem is. One huge problem with a lot of activists today is they will take some tiny, minuscule incident and try to turn it into an international catastrophe. People perk up to see what's going on and they focus attention on the whole deal. Then it comes to light. The earth-shattering incident was not much of anything. Then along comes another minor thing, and the activists rush out a huge, nasty story, only to watch it vanish as the real story comes out. This goes on and on until people ignore everything going on, even when it is a real deal, because the activists cry wolf too many times. Like the climate change activists keep telling us. Back in 1824, climate folks began saying the earth was doomed to grow too cold for people to live on it. That was 1824. In 1859, it was said the gases trapped in the Earth's atmosphere was going to make the Earth too hot for human habitation. 1896, the term global warming was first brought to light. Then all of a sudden the Earth was growing cold and everybody was going to die. There was going to be another ice age. This is why people start yelling climate change. I don't listen. Your predecessors have made me go deaf. In March, down in Melbourne, Australia, a man had a lucky escape while confronting an attacker who was armed with a bow and arrow. The man was holding his cell phone up in order to record the attacker's behavior so he could show it to the police. Well, at that moment, the attacker loosed an arrow directly at his intended victim. The arrow flew true to its course and hit the cell phone instead of the man holding it. The arrow went right through the phone and forced it back into the man's chin. The arrow's killing ability was diminished as it passed through the mobile device and only caused a small cut on the man's chin. Police arrived and took the attacker into custody. I wonder if he was charged with attempted murder or just destruction of a cell phone. After all, those things are expensive. I've heard some weird stories of people being attacked by neighbors. Makes you kind of wonder about the people living around you. April, New Delhi, India. Mountaineers from the Indian Army were out on an expedition in Nepal when they came across tracks in the snow. The Treaty of Peace and Friendship between India and Nepal was signed in 1950. This treaty is instrumental for a close cooperation between the two countries. They agreed to protect each other's interests, and their armies are allowed free access to both countries. So having the Indian Army, dot, not feather, patrolling Nepal is not that unusual. Well, the troops found a mysterious large footprints in the snow that they think belong to the Yeti, or the abominable snowman. The Yeti is part of Nepali folklore and is said to live high in the snow-capped Himalayas. Some believe Yeti live in caves high up in the mountains, while others say they live in the tree line just down from the snowy areas. Trees do not grow above 13,000 feet in Nepal. This is known as the timberline. Some places the timberline is higher and in others it's lower. Any animal living above the timberline would find it rough going. Not that there aren't creatures up there, it's just not very nice. Here's a quick question for you. What color is the Yeti? Most folks will say Yeti are white. There is one reason people think this. It all started with a movie. One movie showed the Yeti being white, and ever since people just assume this is right. And you know what happens when you assume? Just which movie caused this thought process? Lauren Coleman told us this in Jefferson a few years ago. The movie that got people thinking Yeti were all white was called Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, 1964. The abominable snow monster of the North was called Bumble for short, and he was depicted as being white. From that moment on, Yeti were thought to be white. They're actually red or brown. There is one that's supposed to be golden colored, but I think that one is more spirit than flesh and blood. Well, the Indian Army said it had sighted footprints measuring 32 inches by 15 inches close to the camp near Mount Makalu in April 9th. For the first time, an Indian mountaineering expedition team has sighted mysterious footprints of mythical beast Yeti, it said in a tweet. Located on the border between Nepal and China, Makalu, well, if it was Hawaiian, it would be Makalu, I think, is among the highest mountains in the world and stands near the Makalu-Barun Valley, a remote wilderness that has also been surveyed by researchers hunting for the Yeti. The Army spent some time recording the prints and measuring them. Tales of a wild, hairy beast roaming the Himalayas have captured the imagination of climbers in Nepal since the 1920s, prompting many, including Sir Edmund Hillary, to go looking for the creature. Tom Slick, the Texas oil man, was very interested in searching for cryptids. During the 1950s, Slick was an adventurer. He turned his attention to expeditions to investigate things like the Loch Ness Monster, the Yeti, Bigfoot, and the Trinity Alps giant salamanders. Slick's interest in cryptozoology was little known until the 1989 publication of the biography Tom Slick and the Search for Yeti, written by Lauren Coleman. I have a copy, and it is well worth reading. Slick was paying searchers to stay in the mountains in Nepal and Tibet in an effort to spot the creature. They were armed with some of the best photographic equipment of the time. When Tom Slick died in a mysterious plane crash, all of his researchers were promptly fired. In 2008, Japanese climbers returned from a mountain in western Nepal told Reuters that they had seen footprints which they thought belonged to the Yeti. Although they carried long-lens cameras, video cameras, and telescopes, they hadn't seen or taken any photographs of the creature. People wonder why it's so hard to catch a photograph of Bigfoot or a Yeti. I have seen 4 mountain lions in the wild. Each and every time I had a camera with me. How many photographs did I get? None. It is near impossible to get a camera on target, focus, and click a picture of something that is only there for a few seconds. Scientists have found little evidence of the Yeti's existence so far. In 2017, a group of international researchers studied multiple reports of Yeti samples collected from across the Himalayan regions, and they concluded they all belong to bears. I remember watching that special on TV. 2008, Two men in the United States said they had found the remains of a half-man, half-ape, which was eventually revealed to be a rubber gorilla suit. And I remember when this happened. It was all over the news. The funny thing was, the news people kind of ignored the folks like Jeff Meldrum and other cryptozoologists that all said the images in the report all looked fake. I was already decided when I heard who was making the report. I won't mention his name, but the same guy was involved in a huge scam on Coast to Coast many years ago. Why anybody listens to this guy today is way beyond me. In other weird news from 2019, we go to Zurich, Switzerland, where it was announced they are planning to do away with their national emergency stockpile of coffee, which has been in place for decades. Some geezer had decided that coffee beans, which are not actually coffee beans, were not vital to human survival. That right there tells me this guy's an idiot. Whoop. This guy has obviously never tried to drive from Laredo to Jefferson in the middle of the night. That's 550 miles. Nestle, the maker of instant coffee, Nescafe, and other importers, roasters, and retailers are required by Swiss law to store bags of raw coffee. The country stockpiles other staples too, such as sugar, rice, edible oils, and animal feed. This is their equivalent of our strategic stockpile. The United States has huge stockpiles of gas and oil, antibiotics, vaccines, chemical antidotes, antitoxins, and other chemical and medical supplies. I think we need some coffee in there as well. The system of emergency reserves was established between World War I and World War II in Switzerland, preparing for any potential shortages in case of a war, natural disaster, or an epidemic. It almost sounds as if Switzerland knew that World War II was coming. Well, actually they did, but that's another story. Switzerland was about as neutral as the positive post on your battery. Oops, did I say that out loud? During World War II, Switzerland manufactured munitions. For their own use, of course. But a lot of those munitions mysteriously wound up in Germany. But, like I said, that's another story. According to the plan released for public comment, coffee stockpile obligations would expire by the end of 2022, which would free the companies to draw down their stores and their warehouses. The Federal Office for National Economic Supply has concluded coffee is not essential for life, the government said. Coffee has almost no calories. Those of you on a diet should pay attention to that. And is not essential for life, the government said. The Switzerland's mandatory coffee reserves are now spread over 15 companies, including Nestle, and about 15,300 tons, which is enough to cover 3 months of Alpine state domestic coffee consumption. Switzerland's 8.5 million residents consume 20 pounds of coffee per person annually. Britain only drinks about 8 pounds per person. In the United States, we average about 10 pounds per person. There are a lot of people out there who don't drink coffee, and that is okay. It leaves more coffee for those of us who do. Not everyone wants to see the Swiss strategic coffee reserves disappear. Oh boy, the Swiss word Reservisusus, the Bern-based organization that oversees Switzerland's food stockpile, last year asked the federal government to reconsider its recommendation. Of the 15 companies that hold mandatory coffee stockpiles, Reservisusis, well, way too many letters, that said that 12 of the companies wanted to continue with the stockpiles because the existing system helps buttress the supply chain. Some also contend that too little attention was paid to the drink's health benefits like antioxidants and vitamins. I didn't know there were vitamins in coffee, but I did know it was very antioxidant. I did a whole show on coffee. I might do it again someday soon. Stockpile operators concerned clearly show that the one-sided review of weighing calories as a main criteria for vital staple did not do justice to coffee, that magazine wrote. How many calories are in water? Yet water is still considered a necessary consumable. I think the folks wanting to do away with coffee stockpiles are a bunch of tea drinkers. A Nestle spokeswoman declined to comment on their position. A smart move. If they had come out on either side of the argument, they would have upset someone. There are a few companies here in the U.S. that should learn this lesson. It's a bad idea to alienate half your customers for political reasons. Switzerland finances these mandatory coffee stockpiles by charging a fee of 3.75 francs for every 100 kilograms, or over 200 pounds, of imported beans. They raised 2.7 million francs, that's $2.70 million annually, to compensate companies for storing the beans. The Swiss franc is almost the same as the US dollar. There's only a few cents difference. In the event the mandatory stockpile is eliminated, the government said it expected importers to pass on the fee so that people would save money when they bought coffee. I doubt this. Anytime there are savings in production, it hardly ever transfers to the consumers. The extra savings usually winds up in the pockets of the stockholders or the politicians. May was a bad month for many cat lovers. Grumpy Cat, who became an internet sensation after her photo was posted on Reddit in September 22, 2012, it was suggested that the original photo was photoshopped. So Tabitha Bendison posted a few videos on YouTube. The videos went viral and tartar sauce popularity began to grow. You didn't know this? Yes, Grumpy Cat's real name was Tartar Sauce, or Tard for short. It's Tartar with a D, not a T. Her brother's name was Pokey. Pokey didn't look quite as grumpy, so he never got his own movie. People weren't exactly sure what Grumpy Cat really was. She looked kind of like a rag doll or a snowshoe. Ragdolls look like Siamese, but when you pick them up, they just go completely limp in your hands. I don't know if this is a defensive move or what, but it's kind of weird to watch. And the snowshoe have 4 white feet. Tartar Sauce went to the vet on a regular basis, and she was always given a clean bill of health. Her petite size and famous face was likely due to the feline dwarfism, and her rear end wobbled a bit whenever she would walk. Otherwise, she was a perfectly normal cat, although very small. She was not a munchkin and was not bred purposely for the appearance. I used to think that Grumpy Cat couldn't walk because in the movie she never did, but no, it was just because she had a hard time doing it, so they just never filmed it, I guess. Grumpy Cat became such a cultural phenomenon that she inspired art projects, perfume, merchandise. They came out with some shoes from Skechers. There were comics and even Grumpachino coffee. She was also the official spokescat for Friskies and appeared on several U.S. TV shows, including Today and Good Morning America. 2014, she starred in her first and last movie, Grumpy Cat's Worst Christmas Ever. This is the only Christmas movie I own, although I do want to get a copy of Christmas Chronicles with Kurt Russell. It looks like a neat movie. Despite care from top professionals, as well as from her very loving family, Grumpy encountered complications from a urinary tract infection that unfortunately became too tough for her to overcome. She wouldn't drink her cranberry sauce. She passed away peacefully on Tuesday, May 14th at home. I hate it when this happens. Grumpy Cat was worth $5 million when she passed away. I wish my cats would do something like that. The Japanese may be known for their neatness, particularly when it comes to making their bed in the morning, politeness even when they're trying to kill you, but all social norms went out the window during qualifying for the All-Japan Pillow Fight Championship in Shizuoka Prefecture. Did you know in Japan they have professional apologizers? Professional apologizers are trained to offer an apology according to the situation. For example, they may send a person pretending to be your parent or friend to break up with an overclingy lover. Or they may call your workplace pretending to be your wife and tell them you're sick on those days when you just don't feel like going to work. You can hire someone to lie for you. Geez, only in Japan. Well, in the small fishing town of Edo, about 100 miles south of Tokyo, teams gathered from across the region to compete in the event that has been one of Japan's quirkiest since 2013. It was started by a group of high school children from Shizuoka. The game is based on the age-old ritual of pillow fighting. The game starts with all 5 players laying in beds as if they're asleep. The whistle is blown, and they have to leap to their feet and grab their pillows. A mix between dodgeball and chess, the aim is to protect each team's king from being hit by pillows while trying to hit the opponent's king during 2-minute set. One player on each team can use a duvet as a shield. Through track and field activities, the teams have been in touch a long time, said the spokesman, who is 75 and he's one of the oldest participants. The winning team receives prizes from local produce as well as all important qualification for next year's nationwide tournament. I wonder if this will ever come to the U.S. If it does, it will probably not be worth watching. Did you ever watch Most Extreme Elimination Challenge? It was hilarious. You know, some of those folks wound up in the hospital. Then it came to the U.S. and they called it American Gladiators, and it was not worth watching. It didn't look too painful, and it really wasn't too funny to watch. I liked listening to Kenny Blankenship and Nick Romano as they gave each contestant some really bizarre, off-the-cuff names. But the show did look very painful. Britain's political establishment is in chaos over Brexit, and Prime Minister, former Prime Minister, Theresa May's day in office are numbered. But the Tower of London appears safe from legendary doom after the birth of 4 raven chicks at the famous fortress. Legend has it that should the 6 resident ravens ever leave the almost 1,000-year-old tower, home to the crown jewels and now popular tourist attraction, that when the ravens leave the tower, the kingdom will fall. It is believed that since the reign of King Charles II in the 17th century, a small group of birds have been kept there to prevent this from happening, and the current group of 7 ravens have now been joined by 4 newcomers. We are very, very pleased to say here at the Tower of London that we have now got 4 magnificent chicks. The first time they have been born at the Tower of London for over 30 years, said Yeoman Warder Christopher Scaife, the Tower's Raven Master. If you watched Despicable Me, where they're trying to steal... No, on correction, it was the Minions. If you watch the Minions, where they're trying to steal the crown jewels, those guys in the funny-looking outfits, those are yeoman warders. Leave it to the British to dress up like that. Anyway, kind of like the Swiss Guard at the Vatican. Only one of the chicks will be kept at the tower, and will be named either George or Georgina, as the birds were born on St. George Day, which remembers England's patron saint. The British have some hardcore superstitions. The ravens in the Tower of London and the monkeys at Gibraltar. They're called the Barbary apes, and they're a famous tourist attraction. People go to Gibraltar each year, and they take thousands of photographs of these bizarre-looking monkeys. They're very adept at stealing food and anything else from the tourists that come to see them. The creatures have been protected by the British military since early 20th century, and a local Gibraltar legend says that if the creatures were to leave Gibraltar, so too would the British. The primates that are commonly called Barbary apes are not, in fact, apes. They are tailless monkeys known as macaques. How they came to live on the rocks of Gibraltar is something of a mystery, but scientists have forward several theories. One says that the macaques are feral pets of the Moors who occupied Spain from 711 till 1492. Others believe that the creatures are related to the monkeys that used to live throughout Europe, some 5.5 million years ago. Another theory is that the macaques were introduced by the British for target practice in 1740. While scientists may argue over where the animals originated, they're undeniably a fixture of Gibraltar today. The legend which prophesied that their departure would also herald the end of the British rule has been taken seriously for many years. 1913, the population of monkeys shrank to only 10. This prompted the governor of Gibraltar, Sir Alexander Godley, to import 8 young female macaques from North Africa to boost the population. At this time, the importance of the monkeys and their protection was formalized, and they were placed under the care and protection of the military base. Even their food is budgeted by the army, and a non-commissioned officer was appointed to be in charge of all things macaque. I wonder what their shoulder patch looks like. A monkey stealing a camera or something. For 38 years, this duty fell to Sergeant Alfred Holmes. He named the animals, and if they were orphaned, his wife took care of the babies until they could return to the troop. Any macaque that was injured or ill was treated by the Royal Navy Hospital, the same as any of the enlisted men. Sorry, Private, you'll have to stand there and bleed while this monkey gets his finger looked at. Can you imagine you're sitting there in the waiting room and there's a monkey sitting in the chair next to you, trying to steal your wallet? Ah, that's England for you. In the early days of World War II, Winston Churchill visited Gibraltar. He was keenly aware of the legend around the animals, and he was very disturbed to find that the population was again in decline, and there were only 7 monkeys still there. He immediately instructed that 5 new females were to be located and brought to the rock. A troop transport vessel was dispatched to North Africa, and within a short time, Madeline, Kathleen, Beatrice, Daisy, and Jane were all rounded up and found a new home in Gibraltar. And the population was again in balance. The Prime Minister then issued a directive that the population was never to be allowed to fall between 24. A Churchill intervention was driven not by his belief in superstition, but rather by concern for the mindset of the British people, or at least that's what they say. Why is it hard to believe that just maybe Churchill was superstitious? They don't want their world leaders to seem a little quirky, I guess. Not everyone took the same view. In May 1952, Churchill was lambasted in the House of Commons for the Army's extravagance in assigning six soldiers to look after the monkeys. Glad I didn't have to do that when I was in the Army. Eventually, the number of macaques has grown to almost 50. The governor of the island was obliged to offer a few of the animals to zoos and other homes in an attempt to reduce the population before they became a big nuisance. Hey, let's face it, monkeys are a nuisance. 1954, even the Queen visited Gibraltar. I wonder if any of the monkeys tried to steal her crown. At the time, one macaque, a friendly male with a gray coat, was named Winston. Sadly, at the end of 1955, Winston went missing. By the end of January the following year, officials declared him dead after a search for him turned up nothing. The question I have is, did they give Winston a proper soldier's memorial service? 21-gun salute? Probably. The care of the macaques continued to fall to the military until July 1992, when the responsibility was moved to the government. Now, there's a mistake. The animals are currently cared for by the Gibraltar Ornithological and Natural History Society. You put a committee in charge of anything, they're going to screw it up. The riddle of where Churchill sent the troop carrier to find macaques at the start of World War II was solved in 2005. Okay, now we've got researchers studying the monkeys to try to find out where they came from. Genealogy kind of thing. Research documented in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences Journal show that after undertaking DNA tests, the macaques are descended from macaques found in Morocco and Algeria. Today, Churchill would be thrilled to know that the macaque population of Gibraltar is exceedingly healthy. There are 6 troops of animals being guarded by the troops, which collectively amount to about 250 animals. If you're superstitious, then you can certainly believe that Gibraltar will be under the care of the British Crown for many years to come. And on that happy note, I'm going to quick play a commercial or two because I forgot to set my timer. So don't go away, I'll be right back after this. Coffee makes the world go round. And around here, we have the Organic Man Coffee Trike. 4501 McPherson, Suite number 9. If you're not looking for coffee, try their tea. It's the best in town. And remember, life is too short to drink bad coffee. Did you go out UFO hunting and couldn't focus on the sky? Swing on by Del Norte Optical, 107 Calle Del Norte, right across from the Embassy Suites. That's not a weather balloon, that's a flying saucer. And now back to the show. I have a long show. I forgot to set my timer, so I don't know if I'm halfway done or not. Oh well. In July, a Delta Airlines flight attendant restrained a passenger on a flight from Puerto Rico to New York after he shouted, "I am God," and claimed he could save the world. The plane was forced to return to the airport at San Juan, Puerto Rico, and police arrived to take the man into custody. Delta credited passengers with helping subdue the man who became unruly on board. Puerto Rican police then took custody of the man, identified as Carlos Ramirez, 30, and the case was turned over to the U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation. The suspect was aggressive and shouting, "I am God. San Juan is going to disappear tomorrow. I came to save the world and I'm going to end terrorism." And then he tried to enter the main cabin. The cockpit door remained closed and secured throughout the incident. Delta applauded the quick action and professionalism of the crew of the Delta flight. The airline said the flight attendant crew swiftly restrained the individual with help from some of the customers. The flight did ultimately arrive at J.F. Kennedy International Airport with a 2-hour delay. The body of a suspected stowaway fell hundreds of feet from a plane flying over southwest London, and it landed in the garden of a man's home, just missing him as he was laying in his backyard trying to get some sun. Police believe the man fell into the property in Clapham from a landing compartment of a Kenya Airways plane as it lowered its wheels on approach to Heathrow Airport. A neighbor said the body landed only 3 feet from the resident. Can you imagine you're laying there in your backyard and all of a sudden, kawammo, a dead body hits the ground right next to you? He was so lucky not to be hit and killed. The impact obliterated the body, the neighbor said. He didn't even realize what it was to begin with. The man was asleep and then there was a huge impact. I can just picture it. Body hits the ground so hard it comes apart, and you wake up to the sight. Bits and pieces would be scattered around you. Try to relax after this has happened. Police said in a statement they were called to the home on Sunday after the body was found. A post-mortem examination is due to be carried out, and the man has not yet been identified. A bag, water, and some food was found in the landing gear compartment of the plane after it arrived at Heathrow. The photographs show the body landed partly on a concrete paving slab and partly on the lawn, leaving a crater in the garden of the house, which is about 10 miles from Heathrow Airport. Another neighbor told the Press Association that he heard a loud whoomp when the body hit the ground, and he went upstairs to look out the window. At first I thought it was a tramp asleep in the garden. He had all his clothes on and everything, the neighbor was quoted as saying. I had a closer look and I saw there was blood all over the place. His head was not in its proper position. I realized immediately that he must have fallen. The Kenya Airways said that the 4,250-mile trip from Nairobi to Heathrow takes about 8 hours and 50 minutes. It is unfortunate that a person has lost his life by stowing away aboard one of our aircraft, and we express our condolences, the airline said. Have you ever heard of the Darwin Awards? I think we have a winner. Jose Matata fell to his death in 2012 from a British Airways flight from Angola. He was not reported missing, and it took 6 months to identify his body. The inquest into his death heard that he endured temperatures of between minus 50 and 60 degrees Celsius, and he suffered from a lack of oxygen before he fell to the earth. In 2015, the body of a stowaway on a British Airways flight from Johannesburg to Heathrow landed on a shop in Richmond, southwest London. A second stowaway survived the 10-hour flight and was found in the undercarriage of the plane. The stowaways have previously landed in trees and on shop roofs in London after falling on the approach to Heathrow. I did a little research and I found reports of 10 bodies falling from airplanes that were landing at Heathrow. London has a fantastic PR, but the locals realize that a lot of the stuff is just fluff. They have the British Museum, they have the House of Parliament, they have a lot of things that they like to show off around the world. People see these commercials, they see these advertisements, and they think, oh, I gotta go to London. It's historic in a way that no place in the U.S. is. Romans, Britons, Saxons, Celts, and who knows who all else once lived there. It's filled with their monuments, from William the Conqueror's White Tower to the Millennium Bridge. And it was once the capital and the crossroads of the mightiest empire of the world has ever seen, with remnants still visible. Buildings named Canada House and Africa House, and the Nelson on his column at Trafalgar Square. An eternal symbol of British naval might from once upon a time. The town seems to have quite a PR campaign going. People don't stop to think that the cabin of the plane might be pressurized, but not the hull. Places like wheel wells are just closed, but there's no heat and there's no oxygen. Once the stowaway has passed out or died, there's nothing to keep them in the airplane once the landing gear doors open. So, as the plane lines up for a landing, the bodies are going to fall. The Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte just keeps getting bugged during public speeches. A noisy gecko was the latest wildlife contributor to an address by Duterte, interrupting the leader on Thursday evening just as he launched another tirade at the human rights group that are critical of his bloody war on drugs. The reptile's persistence caused laughter in the crowd of mostly soldiers, causing Duterte to stop mid-sentence, turn to his left, and pause for a while to see what the off-camera commotion was. "You brought a gecko here?" he asked an official sitting behind him, drawing some laughs. Geckos are common across Southeast Asia. The small lizard-like reptiles are known for their ability to produce various loud sounds, from barks to chirps to communicate or when threatened. Most of them do not have British accents, although I did save a bunch of money that one time. While activists accused Duterte of cowing his opponents into silence, reptiles and insects have no qualm about pestering him during his often hour-long televised addresses. A big cockroach crawled up his shoulder and down his shirt during a speech in May, when he was lambasting an opponent party ahead of a national election. He joked that the cockroach was one of their supporters. 2 months later, a fly kept buzzing around him and landed on his forehead, just as he was berating his rivals in the Catholic clergy. He said in jest that the fly was actually one of their order. A clumsy driver led police on a 200 million Australian pound chase. That would be $140 million in our cash. The drug bust in Australia after he crashed a van laden with 600 pounds of methamphetamine into a patrol car parked outside a police station in suburban Sydney. The man slammed the drug-filled van into an empty police car at Eastwood in the city's north on Monday morning, crushing its bonnet. That's the hood. I don't know why the British call the hood of a car a bonnet, but that's what they call it. The vehicle then sped off. CCTV footage shows the vehicle fleeing the scene. He was caught by police about an hour later. A search of the vehicle turned up 600 pounds of ice, said the police, who released footage of the drugs neatly packed in cardboard boxes, taped up and loaded in the back of the van. Police said in a statement the drugs had a street value of $200 million in Australia. Australia is the home of the most valuable coin on the planet. Australia always wants to do one up on other people, and they have come out with a $1 million coin. It's about the same size as the coin in Canada, but Australia's coin is solid gold. It weighs 2,231 pounds, and it is actually valued at $50 million. It is over a ton of gold, and it would be very hard to steal, but it would be worth the effort. A goat herd is being credited with helping save the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library from a California wildfire in October by eating 13 acres of flammable scrub and creating an impenetrable firebreak. The 500 hired goats, with names that include things like Vincent Van Goat and Selena Gomez, like to eat noxious weeds and other invasive species that fuel wildfires, said herd owner Scott Morris. By acing their all-you-can-eat assignment, the goats aided in sparing such library treasures as a piece of the Berlin Wall. The Easy Fire, as it was named, raged less than 50 feet from the site's hangar, which housed the Air Force One jet used by the late Republican president, who is buried at the library along with his wife Nancy. Goats Save the Library sounds like a plot to a book. I hope they get some kind of a memorial or something there at the library to show their dedication to saving things. Goats. Holly Persick was driving to a library in Allegheny County, Pennsylvania, when she noticed that her car seemed to be running a bit oddly. My wife called me from Northland Library and said that her car smelled like it was burning and it was making weird sounds, Chris Persick said on a Facebook post. Holly opened the hood to find an engine full of walnuts, neatly packed in grass, which looked as if they'd been stored there by squirrels over the weekend. Chris spent most of an hour cleaning out over 200 walnuts and grass from under the hood. The couple seemed to take the incident in stride. There's definitely going to be an angry group of squirrels somewhere when they discover that their stash has disappeared. We used to have a C-Class RV, a great big house on wheels. It was neat to go someplace and always be home, but man, the gas mileage was horrible. 7 miles to a gallon. We would fire the RV up once a month and drive it to the grocery store to keep the tires flexed and the engine in good shape. The worst thing you can do if you own an RV is to let it sit too long. On one trip, we drove to the store, we got our groceries, we drove around town a bit, and then I pulled back in front of our house. As I pulled up in front of the house and I was standing by the hood, a possum fell out from under the hood. It laid there like possums do, and then I noticed one eyeball was kind of rolling around like he was looking, got up to his feet and waddled away. I opened the hood and I found where the creature had been living. There was a nest of grass piled up right behind the battery. The possum must have been scared beyond belief, but it stayed there even while parked at the grocery store. It took me forever to pull all the trash out from the engine. People might not know this, but possums are a beneficial creature. They eat ticks. If you have a tick problem in your yard, see if you can't entice a possum to come and live, and they will eat all the ticks. They do not carry rabies. They don't bite unless you really annoy them. They just look kind of like a giant rat, and they're kind of icky looking, but possums are actually a beneficial animal, so if you see a possum in your yard, thank him for taking care of your tick problem. The swarms of grasshoppers have descended upon America's Sin City in an unusual abundance in December. They disrupted weather radar and they deterred tourists, invoking hysteria. The clouds of buzzing insects, whose migration through the Las Vegas Valley scientists say is a result of wetter than normal winter, were big enough that the National Weather Service detected them on radar. Radar analysis suggests most of these echoes are biological targets. This typically includes birds, bats, and bugs, and most likely in our case, grasshoppers, the National Weather Service said in Las Vegas. Such migrations occur every few years and should not cause alarm since the insects are not dangerous, Jeff Knight stated. He's an entomologist from Nevada Department of Agriculture. This is the wildest thing in nature I've ever seen, one resident wrote, posting a photograph of a street lamp illuminating a night sky filled with grasshoppers. Attracted to the ultraviolet light, the insects have been clustering around the city's brightly lit tourist district, a concentration of resort hotels and casinos along the strip. The Luxor Skybeam, a pillar of light that rises from the Luxor Hotel, has attracted huge swarms at night, according to videos posted on Twitter. The Best Western Plus Casino Royale on the Strip shuts off its lights on Friday and Saturday to avoid attracting the bugs. In December 2019, Colorado Springs, Colorado. A bank robbery in Colorado apparently wanted to spread some Christmas cheer before he was arrested Monday. Witnesses say they saw a man throwing money from a bag onto the streets in Colorado Springs while yelling, "Merry Christmas." The crazy incident occurred moments after a branch of Academy Bank near the intersection of East Pike Peak Avenue and South Tejon Street was robbed at about 12:30, police said. Moreover, they described the robbery suspect, later identified as David Wayne Oliver, as 65, as an older white male who threatened to use a weapon and left the bank with an undisclosed amount of cash. Police found the perpetrator sitting in front of a coffee shop and arrested him without incident. Bystanders collected up the money and returned it to the bank. On the outskirts of the suburb of Jakarta, housewife Dita Agusta lives with more than 250 cats. She has taken in off the streets, creating a shelter for animals that she hopes will one day be adopted. It is hard to see abandoned cats on the streets, Agusta, 45, said. She had wanted to rescue cats since she was a child and saw stray cats running wild around her neighborhood. When she and her husband Mohammed Lutfi, a catfish farmer, arrived from Bekasi City in West Java to a bigger house in Parung in the same province, south of Jakarta, she was able to take action and began taking in cats. Now the couple spends at least 1 million rupee, that's $72 a day, to cover the cost of food, medicine, and litter for 250 cats they keep. They also employ a pool of 5 workers to clean the entire house twice a day to make sure the shelter is hygienic. She says she does not take in healthy-looking cats, only the ones that need help. She expects that the disabled cats will probably stay with her forever. She also regularly walks through her neighborhood, putting out food for every cat she encounters. In her home, all 250 cats are neutered to contain the population. They're also groomed to ensure they don't create health issues for the surrounding community. 250 cats. I thought I had a few. An artwork that sold for $120,000 and was hailed as a symbol of global trade has been eaten in what might seem a fitting end for something that was an ever-ripening banana duct taped to a wall. The piece titled Comedian by Italian artist Maurizio Catalan was on show at the International Gallery at Miami when a New York performance artist, David Duterte, ate it, saying he was hungry. The stunt on Saturday afforded a whole new meaning to gallery. Dang it. To the gallery founder. Somebody wanting to sell me insurance or fix my roof. Anyway, it kind of surprised the gallery staff when this guy suddenly reached out and ate one of the art exhibits. All is not lost for the buyer, who was going to have to deal with the demise of the banana at some point anyway. The work apparently comes with a certificate of authenticity, and the owner can replace the banana. Okay, you've got a banana taped to the wall, and somebody paid $120,000 for it? This has been interesting, said Miami Beach Police Captain Steve Fieldman, who was called in to maintain order as the crowd swelled. Okay, are they that bored in Miami? Hey, some guy just ate a banana. Let's go have a look. I've got better ways to spend my time. The art was originally hailed by Perrotin as a symbol of global trade, a double entendre as well as a classic device for humor. I look at bananas all the time. I have them here at the house, and I have yet to laugh because I'm looking at a banana, but then the Minions did kind of get a little quirky about bananas. Let's think about this for a second. A banana is worth about 30 cents. A piece of duct tape, well, the whole roll is $8. And then you've got whatever it's stuck to, which it was stuck to a wall. So you got maybe $10 or $12 worth of art supplies, and it's valued at $120,000. I kind of think the art community is all nuts. A Filipina schoolgirl, Rhea Bulos, won 3 gold medals at an athletic competition this week without wearing any shoes. She couldn't afford running gear, so she simply wrapped her feet in tape. And then, to be stylish, she drew the Nike iconic swoosh logo on the tape. Bulos, 11, was one of several on her team of 12 athletes who made their own footwear because they only had 2 pairs of running shoes between them. That's what you call poor. Trainer Patrick Valenzuela said Bulos showed her rare talent after taking up athletics only a month ago. A pair of running shoes could make a big difference in her future. When I see people complain about being so poor they can only afford last year's cell phone, it makes me just a little mad. People are scraping by all over the world with nothing. This kid doesn't even have any shoes, and does she complain about it? No, she makes her own. And she manages to win 3 gold medals. Instead of saying she couldn't do it because, she just went ahead and did it. Maybe Nike should try using her as their spokesperson instead of some of these overpaid athletes. Talk about she just did it. So, 2019 was a very strange year. I hope 2020 will be just as weird, if not weirder. These are not all the strange stories I found. These are just the ones I thought would make a good show. If you enjoyed tonight's show, let your friends know. Tell them what they missed. If you didn't like it, nobody wants to hear from you anyway. So, till next week, this is Chris James for Strange Things.
Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man? They say murder 3. Strange things that happen here, how stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree?